Kunle had always believed that success came from hard work. His mother had taught him that nothing good in life was easy. She worked day and night to take care of him and his siblings after their father died. Even when there was no food, she found a way to keep them alive. Because of this, Kunle grew up with a strong mind. He told himself that no matter how hard life became, he would succeed. After years of struggling, he finally graduated from university with a degree in business administration. He thought that once he had a certificate, his problems would be over. But life after school was not what he expected. Kunle sent out job applications every week. At first he was hopeful. He believed that if he kept applying, someone would give him a chance. But weeks turned into months, and months turned into years. Every time he received a rejection, his heart broke a little more. Some companies never even replied to his emails. His fiancée, Sadie, was the only one who encouraged him. They had been together since university, and she had seen all his struggles. She would always say, "Kunle, your time will come. Fate has a way of rewarding people who don't give up." But Kunle was tired. One day, he got an interview invitation from a big company in Lagos. It was the kind of job he had been dreaming of. He prepared day and night, reading everything he could about the company. He practiced answering interview questions in front of the mirror. He borrowed money from a friend to buy a suit because he wanted to look professional. On the day of the interview, he woke up early, full of confidence. He traveled to Lagos, entered the office, and sat before a panel of 3 interviewers. But the moment they saw him, he felt something was wrong. The manager, Chief Onikoyi, barely looked at his resume. "Kunle," he said, "thank you for coming, but we are looking for someone who fits our company's image." Kunle was confused. "Sir, I have the qualifications and experience." "Yes," the chief interrupted, "but you don't have the right connections. We need someone who understands how things work in our society." And just like that, the interview was over. Kunle walked out of the office, his heart heavy. He had worked hard. He had done everything right. So why was life still unfair? As he sat in the bus heading home, he kept thinking, is it my background? Is it because I don't know the right people, or is fate just against me? That evening, he sat outside staring at the sky. Sadie joined him, holding his hand. "Maybe I'm just not meant to succeed," he said softly. Sadie squeezed his hand. "Kunle, fate isn't what happens to us. It's what we do with what happens to us." Her words stayed in his mind. That night, he went to bed feeling lost, not knowing that the next day, fate would bring him face to face with someone who would change his life forever. The morning sun was bright, but Kunle's heart felt heavy. He woke up feeling restless. His dreams had been filled with strange images, doors closing, shadows laughing, and a voice whispering, "You are looking in the wrong place." He shook off the feeling and decided to take a walk. He needed fresh air to clear his mind. As he strolled through the busy streets of his small town, he passed by the market. The smell of fried akara and roasted corn filled the air, and traders shouted, calling for customers. As he walked past a small herbal shop, an old woman sitting in front of it called out to him.
"Young man,"
she said in a calm but strong voice,
"you carry a burden heavier than your shoulders can bear."
Kunle stopped in his tracks. He had never seen this woman before, yet her words felt like she knew everything about him. He turned to look at her. She was elderly, with deep wrinkles on her dark skin. Her eyes were sharp, almost as if they could see through his soul. He hesitated before speaking. "Mama, how do you know?" She smiled.
"It is written all over you. Disappointment, frustration, questions without answers. Come, sit down."
Kunle was unsure, but something about the woman made him curious. He stepped closer and sat on a wooden stool.
"My name is Madame Morayo,"
she said.
"I have seen many young men like you, men who work hard but still fail. And do you know why?"
Kunle shook his head. "I don't know, Mama. That's what I want to understand." She nodded.
"Let me tell you a story."
Kunle leaned in as she began.
Years ago, there was a poor farmer named Adebayo. He was hard-working, honest, and determined. Every planting season he would wake up early, clear his land, and plant his crops. But no matter how much effort he put in, his harvest was always poor. Meanwhile, other farmers who worked less than him had rich harvests. One day, Adebayo met a wise man who told him, "Go and plant your crops in the cursed land beyond the river, and you will see the truth about fate." Adebayo was confused. Everybody knew that the land beyond the river was bad for farming. It was dry, rocky, and nothing ever grew there. But he was desperate, so he decided to listen to the wise man. He took his seeds and planted them in the so-called cursed land, and something strange happened. His crops grew, taller, greener, and healthier than anyone had ever seen. People were shocked. They asked him, "How did you succeed where others failed?" The wise man later explained to him, "The land was never cursed. People only believed it was, so they never tried. You succeeded because you did what others refused to do."
Kunle frowned, thinking about the story. "Mama, what does that have to do with me?" Madame Morayo smiled.
Fate is not what people think it is. It is not just luck or misfortune. Sometimes people fail because they are planting in the wrong soil. You are looking for success where others are looking, but have you ever considered looking elsewhere? Sometimes the best opportunities are in the places people avoid.
Kunle sat in silence. The story made sense, but he didn't know how to apply it to his own life. He had been chasing corporate jobs because that's what everyone said was the right path. But what if he had been searching in the wrong places all along? As he stood up to leave, Madame Morayo touched his shoulder.
Think deeply about what I have told you, young man. Fate is not about waiting for luck. It is about knowing when to act, where to plant your efforts, and when to change direction.
Kunle nodded slowly. "Thank you, Mama." As he walked home, her words kept ringing in his ears. Maybe the problem wasn't fate. Maybe the problem was his approach. That night, for the first time in a long while, Kunle didn't feel hopeless. He felt something different, curiosity. And curiosity, he would soon learn, was the first step to changing his destiny. Kunle woke up the next morning with a different feeling. Madame Morayo's words played in his mind like an echo.
Fate is not about waiting for luck. It is about knowing when to act, where to plant your efforts, and when to change direction.
For years, he had been chasing white-collar jobs because society made it seem like that was the only way to succeed. But what if there were other ways? What if he had been searching in the wrong places all along? He sat up on his bed, deep in thought. Then, an idea struck him. Business. Kunle had always believed that starting a business required huge capital, but maybe he was wrong. He began thinking about the things people around him needed, things he could provide. He thought about the market, the customers, and what he could start with little money. His heart raced with excitement. He quickly got dressed and went to see his friend, Ayo, who owned a small poultry farm at the edge of town. "Ayo, how much does it cost to start a poultry business?" Kunle asked the moment he arrived. Ayo laughed. "Ah, Kunle, so you want to join me in this business?" "I just want to know," Kunle said. Ayo wiped sweat from his forehead. "It depends. You can start small with just 5 chicks and grow from there." Kunle nodded. "How do I get chicks?" Ayo gave him all the details, where to buy chicks, how to feed them, and how to take care of them. Kunle was surprised. He had always thought business was complicated, but Ayo made it sound simple. The problem, however, was money. Kunle had no savings. Every kobo he had went into transport or for job interviews. He returned home, thinking of how to raise money. Then he remembered something, his old laptop. It was the only valuable thing he owned. It was painful, but he knew what he had to do. The next day, he sold his laptop and used the money to buy 5 chicks and a small bag of feed. It was a small beginning, but it was something. Days turned into weeks, and Kunle took care of the chicks like they were his children. He fed them, cleaned their space, and monitored their growth. His mother was surprised to see him so focused. "Kunle, are you sure about this poultry business?" she asked one evening. "Yes, Mama," he replied. "I'm tired of waiting for a job that may never come. I want to take control of my life." His mother nodded and smiled. "May God bless your efforts." But the journey was not easy. One morning, Kunle woke up and found one of his chicks lying lifeless. He panicked. He checked the others, and 2 more looked weak. Fear gripped his heart. If he lost them, all his efforts would be wasted. He rushed to Ayo, who told him what medicine to buy. Kunle spent the last of his money on the medicine, praying it would work. For the next few days, he barely slept. He monitored the chicks, making sure they were eating and drinking properly. Slowly, they recovered. It was a small victory, but it gave him hope. 2 months later, his chicks had grown into full-sized chickens, ready to be sold. Kunle took them to the market, unsure of what to expect. To his surprise, buyers rushed to him. By the end of the day, he had sold all 5 chickens and made a small profit. It wasn't much, but it was a start. As he walked home, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. That night, he sat outside, staring at the sky like he always did. But this time, he wasn't sad. He smiled as he remembered Madame Morayo's words. Maybe fate wasn't against him. Maybe he just needed to change his approach. And this was only the beginning. Kunle's poultry business started small, but it grew faster than he expected. With the profit he made from selling his first set of chickens, he bought more chicks and expanded his little farm. At first, people laughed at him. "Ah, Kunle, so after university, you have become a chicken seller?" One of his old classmates, Tunde, mocked. Kunle simply smiled. "At least I'm making money. How about you?" Tunde frowned and walked away. Kunle knew many of his classmates were still jobless, waiting for opportunities that might never come. He didn't have time to argue with them. He had work to do. Months passed, and Kunle's business continued to grow. He reinvested his profits, built a bigger co-op, and started selling to restaurants and hotels. The same people who once laughed at him began to respect him. One evening, as he returned from the market, he saw Madame Morayo sitting outside her shop. He hadn't seen her in months. He rushed to greet her. "Mama, I finally understand what you were trying to teach me," Kunle said, smiling. She chuckled.
"Tell me, my son, what have you learned?"
Kunle sat beside her. "At first, I thought fate was against me. No matter how hard I worked, I kept failing. But now I understand that fate is not about luck or misfortune. It's about choices. I spent years looking for a job because that's what society told me was the right path. But when I changed my direction, everything changed for me." Madame Morayo nodded.
"You see, my son, many people waste their lives waiting for fate to favor them. They blame bad luck for their problems. But fate is not about sitting and waiting. Fate is like the wind. You must adjust your sail to catch it."
Kunle smiled. "And that's what I did." The old woman placed a hand on his shoulder.
"I'm proud of you, Kunle. You have discovered a secret that many people never realize. Fate does not control us. We control how we respond to it."
Kunle left Madame Morayo feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. His journey had been difficult, but he was finally on the right path. 1 year later, Kunle's poultry farm was one of the biggest in the area. He had employees working under him, and his business was thriving. He no longer worried about job applications or rejection letters. He had built his own success. One evening, as he sat outside his house with Sadie, she smiled at him and said, "Kunle, do you remember what I told you before?" He nodded. "Yes, you told me that fate has a way of rewarding those who do not give up." She squeezed his hand. "And you didn't give up." Kunle looked up at the sky, remembering all the struggles he had faced. He had learned an important lesson. Fate does not decide who succeeds or fails. It only presents opportunities, and it is up to us to take them. As he sat there, feeling the cool evening breeze, he realized something. The hidden secret about fate that no one talks about is simple. Fate is not what happens to you. Fate is what you do with what happens to you. And Kunle had chosen to take control of his own fate.
Many people believe that fate decides who succeeds and who fails. They think that no matter how hard they try, life has already written their story. But let me tell you something. Fate is not what happens to you. Fate is what you do with what happens to you. You can work hard every day, wake up early, and chase success with everything in you, but if you are walking in the wrong direction, your efforts will lead to frustration. Hard work alone is not enough. You must be strategic. Kunle thought success would come from an office job, but no matter how hard he tried, the doors never opened. Why? Because he was chasing the wrong opportunities. Rejection is not a sign that you are doomed to fail. It is a sign that you need to change your approach. If one path does not work, find another. If one door refuses to open, build your own. Kunle spent years waiting for someone to give him a job when his true success was in creating something of his own. Success does not always come in the form you expect. Sometimes it looks different from what you imagined. Kunle thought his future was in business administration, but fate led him to poultry farming. At first, he resisted it. He thought it was beneath him. But when he humbled himself and took the opportunity, he became successful. That is the mistake many people make. They reject opportunities just because they don't look the way they expected. But greatness is not about how you start. It's about what you do with what life gives you. Most importantly, fate does not control you. You control how you respond to fate. You can sit and complain that life is unfair, or you can take action. The moment Kunle stopped blaming circumstances and started creating his own opportunities, everything changed. So ask yourself today, are you waiting for fate to favor you? Or are you adjusting your path to find success? Because at the end of the day, fate is not about luck. It is about recognizing opportunities, taking action, and never giving up. Your destiny is in your hands. What will you do with it? Thank you for watching. If you have been inspired by this story, kindly respond by subscribing to this channel so we will also be inspired to bring you more impactful stories. Share the video link with a friend to be inspired. You can also share your thoughts in the comment section. See you soon!